Day number 2 of the WNBA season in 2024, and we look back on the quadruple header of opening night to start this second hour with Karina Mustafa joining us here on this Wednesday to go back around the 4 games. Caitlin Clark's WNBA debut last night in Connecticut, the title defense for a second consecutive season in Las Vegas for the Aces, and so much more. Karina, thank you for taking the time to join us here on this Wednesday on the Early Line.
Great to be back. I'm so excited that the W season is back.
And it's going to be a great season. The most highly anticipated season in the WNBA, off to a very strong start last night in those 4 games. Karina, we start in Connecticut with Caitlin Clark's WNBA debut. Wasn't exactly the greatest debut for the number 1 overall pick. 20 points, a team high for Indiana, but she did not score until the second quarter and also had 10 turnovers, the most we have ever seen in a WNBA debut in league history. And the Sun take advantage. Connecticut wins by 21, 92-71 on their home floor last night, easily covering as an 8-point favorite. Karina, what did you learn from game number 1 between the Fever and the Sun?
Listen, I think if you wanted a welcome to the W moment for Caitlin Clark, going up against Alyssa Thomas and the Connecticut Sun was exactly that. I mean, the Connecticut Sun are one of the deepest teams in the leagues. Like, make it no mistake. Of course, Caitlin is always going to have that transition when you're going into the professional league. But to have your first opponent be the Sun, who have been very successful the last few seasons, and have that MVP candidate in Alyssa Thomas, DeWanna Bonner, who became 5th on the all-time scoring leader in the WNBA. She finished with 20 points, 6 rebounds. Alyssa Thomas, like I said, got her first triple-double. You got a lot of Ty Harris, Dejanay Carrington, like all of these players who have kind of developed into their roles, did a great job of kind of, stifling the Indiana Fever and Caitlin Clark. And yes, Caitlin had a slow start, but I think what I liked from her is that later in the game, even though they were down, once her shots kind of started falling, you could see her kind of relax a little bit more. I think there were a lot of nerves to start. So it's okay. I think that game kind of went exactly as you might have expected.
By the way, Karina, if we're taking a look at the WNBA season, because I think you bring up some good points here in talking here before we went live on the air, the excitement here in the air for the WNBA. Now, hoopheads are always going to say, yes, a new basketball season is starting. This is fantastic. But the average fan, the casual fan being brought into the tent, that was a big deal yesterday with Caitlin Clark coming into her first game and also championship teams playing, the superstars on the horizon. Talk to us about the excitement for just being a WNBA fan, but also the other fans not going like, you know what? I need to watch this sport more.
Yeah, I mean, you could feel it. Like, it was a Sun home game, but there were a lot of Fever fans in the building, and they were cheering just as loud for Caitlin and the rest of that team. But yeah, it's like an interesting time because all of these fans that kind of came over for March Madness are now like watching the WNBA. And then there's also the fans that have been around for a while, and they're like, yeah, we got some history here too. So like with the Connecticut Sun beating the Indiana Fever, they're like, yeah, that's exactly what's supposed to happen. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how the new eyeballs, mix together with the people that have been here already. But I think, a lot of the new players too, like even if you look at Chicago, Angel Reese, Camila Cardoso, just like what they've brought already to their teams, it's an unprecedented time, I think, in the league.
Yeah, Karina, we talked about this yesterday in previewing the season. I think it was during the WNBA draft show that Ryan Rucco, who called a lot of the action for ESPN during the women's NCAA tournament, said it best. It's time for a moment to be followed by momentum into a new WNBA season. And if you looked at the game last night, the Sun were an 8-point favorite for a reason. Connecticut was the 3rd best team, only a small peg behind both the Liberty and the Aces last year at 27 and 13. They should have hammered the Fever, who were 13 and 27 a season prior, and that's what happened. And Alyssa Thomas, as you mentioned, sensational. A triple-double for the 8th time since the start of last year. That's more than anybody else has had in their WNBA careers, and she's done it since the start of 2023, including the playoffs. So let's focus on Caitlin Clark one last time. A team-high 20 points for Clark in her debut, but again, those 10 turnovers. Only 3 dimes, did make 4 triples as she started to find her footing throughout that game last night against the Sun. The great weight of expectation, Karina, has been placed on Caitlin Clark dating back to her time at Iowa, now here in the W. How do you expect the rest of her rookie campaign to fare?
Yeah, I mean, you look at those 10 turnovers in this first game, and I think that speaks a lot to the decision making that Coach Christy Sides kind of talked about before this game, where everything is so much quicker in the WNBA, and Caitlin is going to see that. So that's kind of where those turnover numbers came from. And so what I'm interested to see in the rest of her rookie season is how she kind of adapts to that, how she adapts to defensive pressure, because Dejanay Carrington was on her all night. So you're going to get players like that every night. And so the way that she makes decisions, whether it's like to give that extra pass or to take the shot herself, the way that she gets her open looks, I think that's going to be key for her in her development for the rest of the season. And I'm sure that it'll happen because Caitlin, of course, there's a reason why she was the number one player. There's a reason why the Fever have had like the top pick the last 2 seasons and then number 2 pick the year before. So they're going to be able to develop her. And I'm really excited to see what she does under WNBA coaching.
The Fever do have some young talent here, and granted, when you're drafting number 1 overall, that's what you're supposed to get. If you take a look at the loss last night, it's a long season, and yes, they were the underdogs here, but do we change the outlook here of the Fever, or what do you expect, I should say, from the Fever this season after that performance on opening night?
Listen, I think the Fever are still in that rebuilding mode. Last year, they had the most amount of wins that they've had in a really long time, and I can't say I expect them to get more than they did last season by a lot. I think we have to temper expectations when it comes to seeing what the Fever do, because if you look at their upcoming schedule, it's not very easy. They've got the Liberty twice, they got the Sun again, the Storm, the Sparks, the Aces, the Sparks, and the Storm. And that's not an easy lineup of teams to play against, especially when you're just kind of figuring out how to play with each other in this first part of the season. So I expect them to remain competitive within these games because they've shown that they can do that in flashes, but don't expect them to be winning a lot of them. They're still kind of in that phase where next year they might be able to take that next competitive leap, but it's going to take some time.
To Karina's point, last year 13 wins. The 3 years prior, 5 wins, 6 wins, 6 wins. The Fever have had a losing record for 7 straight seasons. Yes, there is expectation and an expected elevation with Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston, the last 2 number 1 overall picks, but give it some time. Now we look at the Rookie of the Year odds, where Caitlin Clark is a really hefty favorite at -700. But Karina, let's shine some light on the other rooks. Now in the WNBA, a new guard that we came to love during the women's college basketball season. How do you expect the rest of the rookies to perform in their first year in the WNBA?
Listen, I mean, you see Cameron Brink on there, Rukia Jackson in LA. I went to Edmonton to watch them play in the WNBA Canada game. They looked phenomenal. I think their transition to the league is going to be really cool to see on the Sparks this year. Angel Reese, I think, also showed out already. And the team that I'm looking at actually is the Dallas Wings, because they have JC Sheldon, who I believe is going to get a lot of playing time now just based on the roster decisions that they did make. It seems like they have a lot of belief in her. So I'm looking to see how she does, as well as Jaylen Brown, who showed out in the preseason for the Wings and ended up making the team and kind of solidifying her spot. So there's a lot of exciting rookies. Of course, Aaliyah Edwards, I got to rep her here from the North. She had like 6 points, 2 rebounds, and 1 block against Liberty last night. So there's a lot of really exciting rookies this year. I think this was a great draft class.
Listen, the Mystics kept things very close against the New York Liberty last night in the nation's capital, and we will see Angel Reese and Camila Cardoso in their debuts tonight with Chicago. The same for the LA Sparks at home against the Atlanta Dream. We'll continue the recaps here around the WNBA on the other side of the break with Karina Mustafa. We'll look back at the rest of the action from the opening night. Yes, a ton of focus in Connecticut for Caitlin Clark's debut against the Sun. But we had the Aces begin their 2nd consecutive WNBA championship defense last night at home as well.